Hey there folks, Toby Pittman here for Audio Tuts Plus, and today we're going to do a guitar tutorial on open string runs. Now if you want to follow along, there's some tab down there somewhere. Go and grab your guitar and tune up, and let's get started. Now what's an open string run? Well, the concept is that if you have a fretted note with the same value as an open string, you replace the fretted note with the open string. Now, inside a scalic idea, or inside a scale or a run, this produces an effect similar to that of a sustain pedal on a piano, with all the notes ringing together, or you're trying to get as many notes ringing together as you can. So here's an example quickly. Okay, and that's just a basic G major scale. Now these ideas can be used to embellish solos or chord ideas, beginnings, endings, and although the technique is very country, it takes its roots from country guitar players who were trying to emulate pedal steel, which has a lot of ringing notes, and banjo, which has a lot of open strings. It doesn't mean it has to be a country thing. You can apply this to any style from rock to reggae, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, the choice is yours. Okay, so let's have a look at the first example. Now this first example is just a very basic E minor pentatonic scale. Now it's probably the first thing everybody learns when they pick up the guitar. Now you can produce this effect going down, and you'll hear that all the open strings are left ringing. Now going up is a different matter because you're fretting notes and lifting your finger to play another note. The notes are cut off. So what we can do is take advantage of the fact that the guitar has sort of more than one way to play the same note. So instead of fretting these notes here, which would be the fretted notes of the scale, I can play them here, thus allowing me to leave some of these other strings ringing. So here's just a partial example of the scale. Instead of hitting the B here, I would hit the B here and leave the A string ringing. The open D, instead of hitting the E on the 2nd fret of the D string, I would hit it on the 7th fret of the A string. And we can just carry on up. So that's kind of the basics of how this works. So let's move on to some more kind of scalic examples. So example 2 is just a simple E major scale. Let's have a look. So I'm in position 4. And I'm starting on the 3rd of the scale. Now you can see that I'm replacing these two notes here, the B and the E, with the B and the E here. And then just following up F sharp and G sharp. Simple. Now this lick is in position 1 of the E major scale, and I'm starting on the 5th note, B, but B has an open string value, so I'm starting the run with the open string. Sliding up here and then trying to get these two notes to ring together as well. Again, it's a similar idea, same scale. We can just apply it to a different part of the neck and get a little bit more range out of the lick. So example 4 is a descending E major lick. Let's have a look at that. So what I have here is, it's not a full scale because I'm missing the A out, but it should sound like this. So what I'm doing here is I'm just replacing this fretted E here with the open E, coming down to the D sharp, the C sharp on the G string, and then the B, which is the next note of the scale. And then I've got this G sharp, F sharp that I'm trying to get to ring here as well before ending on the E. Now obviously you can use these, if we're in E major, we can use these ideas over any chord that belongs to E major. E major has an E major, F sharp minor, G sharp minor, A, B, C sharp minor, D sharp minor 7 flat 5, back to E. So here's a little idea over a C sharp minor, well, yeah, C sharp minor chord, which is the relative minor chord to E major. Now this could be just a nice little way to embellish that chord. In, you know, just in a piece of music. Now you might have noticed if you've been looking at the right hand that I'm using a hybrid technique to pick these. So any open string that happens, I'm using the middle finger to do it. And this just means you don't have to keep jumping about with the pick. You can leave your hand pretty steady. And it's just a more efficient way of playing. We'll get to an example later where there's some quite big jumps. So this is something to consider when doing this technique. Now another thing you might have noticed is you're going to need to be in a key that has a lot of notes that are open strings. For example, this is E, A, D, G and B. Now the keys of C, G and D contain all of these notes. Now we've been playing in E major, and E major doesn't contain a G or a D, and that's why we've been utilising the B and E strings. Now E is quite a nice key to play these in, but you'll find that G, C and D will work really well as well, because they contain all of these notes. Now you might think to yourself, well that's only 4 keys, it's a little bit limiting, but if you think that all of those keys have 7 modes, now you've got 28 scales that you can apply these ideas to. And you can really, you know, once you learn them in G, C, D and E, you can really apply these to any of those scales modes. So let's have a look at an idea now. It's a G major scale, and then we'll have a look at how we can apply that to a mode of G major. Okay, this is a 2-octave G major scale. Basically what's going to happen is this is based on a 3-note per string pattern. Very common pattern. But instead we're going to start replacing some of these notes with open strings, basically the A, D, G and B. Okay, and it looks like this. Now this is a very common open string lick pattern. It contains a lot of these kind of ideas. They're quite wide stretches which can take a little bit of getting used to. You also have this phenomenon where you hit the A string, you're going to have to cross to the B string and then back, you know, back 1 string to hit the higher note. So you're essentially going down to go up the scale, which can be a little bit hard to get your head round. So you can do this going down as well. Let's have a look at that. Now this is a really nice effect going down this G major scale. Okay, and it was similar to the example I showed you right at the beginning. Now, just to prove this can work in another key, I'm playing a G major scale, but let's apply it to the relative minor, which is E minor. Okay. So now we can take this G major scale and apply it to A Dorian, which is the second mode of G major. Now, A Dorian has a very stylistic sound. It's kind of a bit bluesy, a bit jazzy. And we can just take that same shape and make a phrase. So here it is up close. Now we've just recycled a shape here, and we can do this again. Let's do an idea in E Dorian. Now the only difference between G major, which is the parent scale of A Dorian, and D major, which is the parent scale of E Dorian, is one note, and that's, you can do this by changing the C to a C sharp. Okay, so now instead of this pattern, we now play this pattern. Let's have a look at this lick up close. Now this example is quite interesting because I'm trying to achieve this same effect with fretted notes as well. Up here. So when I reach the top, I'm trying to get the same effect up, you know, without using the open strings. So here's one in B natural minor, and B natural minor is the relative minor of D major. And it's the same scale as E Dorian because they all belong to D major. And this is just played in another position. Now you'll notice this has quite a big jump. Before we were going A and B and skipping one string. Now we're going A, B and skipping two strings. And this is where this hybrid technique comes in handy. So we had and then the open E. And I'm trying to get these notes to ring out as well. Now this can be quite a handful, this one, but it just goes to prove you could play this over D major, you know, E Dorian, or B natural minor, or any mode that belongs to D major. Now I couldn't go without doing some sort of country style kind of lick, as, you know, this technique is kind of synonymous with that kind of style. So here's example 10. Now this lick is based on a kind of chromatic mixolydian idea. You might be thinking, what is that? Well, I'm thinking about this as a mixolydian, but I'm trying to add some kind of chromatic passing tones, basically between the 2 and the 3 of the scale. And here I'm just using the open strings to make these kind of run together. Now interestingly, I've got a kind of a chromatic idea happening here, which can sound a little bit grating as it's passing through this minor third, but I kind of like that. That is kind of part of the country sound. So give this one a go. It's a nice fun lick, one of my favourites. Now obviously I've just scratched the surface of what you can do with this technique, and there are hundreds and hundreds of different ways you can play these ideas. The important thing is to understand how it works. So, you know, it might be a good study. If you've got existing ideas, try to incorporate this open string technique with those ideas. If you ever see a note on the guitar that happens to be an open string, try reworking that phrase to suit this technique. Now, there are a lot of players who do this really well. If you want to check out some good country players, you know, Brent Mason, Danny Gatton, Chet Atkins, Jerry Reed, there's hundreds of them out there, and some of it is really impressive stuff, so it might be worth checking that out. I mean, I was a metal player when I first heard this technique, and I was like, wow, that's something I kind of want to get into. Now then, this is obviously the first video tutorial I've ever done, so I hope it was alright. If you've got any comments, leave them below. If you've got any requests for tutorials, leave them below. I plan to do a couple more of these. So yeah, that's about it from me. I'll see you next time. Cheers.